In the 1990s, American government agencies started to provide information services online. One example is Thomas, a service formerly provided by the United States Library of Congress. Created in 1995, Thomas was the first website to track U.S. congressional legislation. Hoping to encourage the creation of online tools, researchers began to study why some government agencies built innovative websites, but others did not. Today, website studies are much less common because researchers have moved on to newer, more exciting topics, but I argue that there's still a need to study their development, and there are two reasons for this. So, first is that prior studies did not acknowledge that web infrastructure can span across organizational boundaries, and what this means is that past studies may have overlooked causes of website adoption. Second, websites also need to be updated and replaced over time, so it's important to identify new barriers that prevent governments from updating or changing them as needed. As an example of how important it is to periodically update and replace websites, imagine if Microsoft still had the same website today as it did in 1994. To address these issues and fill a gap in the literature, I drew on theories of bureaucratic organization from public administration and Everett Rogers' diffusion of innovations theory. Theories of bureaucratic organization argue that organizations consist of structures and that these structures influence how they function. So, for example, rules are one type of structure, and very strict ones can prevent a new website from being built. Rogers theorized that there are 6 structural variables or traits that influence if organizations are likely to change, and both theories of public administration and Rogers' theory agree that working with outsiders or third parties can make it easier for organizations to change. Informed by these ideas, I conducted a 2-part study. In the first part of my study, I sent a survey to all 50 American state departments of transportation. My survey collected information about their demographics, how their websites are managed, and what their web infrastructure looked like. Then, later in a second phase, I conducted follow-up interviews with IT managers and communications officers based on survey results and asking why they built their websites in particular ways. Next, I analyzed transcripts in a manner similar to grounded theory, and I used this qualitative data to identify causes of website adoption instead of looking at quantitative figures to make sure that I didn't overlook causal variables. My survey received 61 responses from 45 different agencies. A total of 23 states shared servers, 32 used a private server, and all but 5 managed web infrastructure in-house. Most of my states worked with other government agencies to build their website and didn't do their work on their own. So for adoption causes, I conducted 12 interviews and 6 causes emerged. These were bureaucracy and authority, missions, resources, technology, knowledge and expertise, and cultural, personal, and social factors. Somewhat surprisingly, my 6 causes of adoption all map to Rogers' structural traits. When examining data closely, it appears that working with third parties allowed decision makers to bypass internal barriers to change, but new ones emerged elsewhere. So, in short, fixing a problem in-house didn't really fix the problem elsewhere. And this calls into question theories of bureaucratic organization that argue contracting out or networking makes government agencies necessarily more innovative. Now, logically, my findings apply to other public sector organizations like libraries, universities, and nonprofit entities, and fundamental to the adoption process was the influence of leaders or decision makers. In several cases, what happened is decision makers simply decided there was a need for a new website and staff were forced to make it happen. Now, all of this suggests that e-government, LIS, and information systems researchers should focus on training their students on how to be more effective in prioritizing the role that websites and information services play in organizational operations. And this includes when decision makers should delegate authority and resources to staff as opposed to making decisions on their own. Ultimately, however, my conclusion is that working with third parties just isn't as beneficial as theorized. Simply put, it's not enough to work with another entity to engender change, but organizations should also work with others to build a website when the needs that they have make sense meeting with those of others and when collaboration is rational. Thank you for taking the time to listen, and if you have any questions, please email me at ajmillion@gmail.com.